It's Tuesday, September 17, 2019, and this is Globespan 24x7 News. My name is Samuel Suknandon, coming to you live from Georgetown, Guyana. Here are the major headlines for today. 4-hour-long meeting at GECOM ends with no definitive decision. Gaskin disagrees with decision to rescind findings of Mayor and City Council's Commission of Inquiry. Another court case filed seeking cabinet's resignation or removal. East Coast Demerara painter stabbed to death by his brother. And Guyana's third sexual offences court opens in Essequibo. Over to you with me.
Thank you, Samuel. Let's take a look at the headline for news in the diaspora in the region and around the world. Bahamas and other Caribbean islands to face another hurricane in a few days. 3 migrants killed, 11 detained after the boat sinks in Puerto Rico. Oil plummets 5% as Saudi output seen returning soon after attacks. And Israel's prime minister fights to hang on to power in a second general election. Join me in a short while for these details and more, but first let's go back to Samuel for details in today's news.
Thank you. And now for a look at some of the major news headlines. Another court application was filed today seeking a mandatory order to have cabinet resign. The application was filed by attorney at law Kamal Ramkaran on behalf of opposition, Member of Parliament and former Attorney General Anil Nandlal. The respondent in that matter is Attorney General Basil Williams. The application, which was seen by Globespan 24x7 News, states that cabinet has two options. One is to resign, and two, that the government gives full effect to the law and remove from office. The application highlighted that, and I quote, if the government is defeated on a vote of no confidence, as happened on December 21, 2018, this body, which is collectively responsible to Parliament for the general direction and control of the government and collectively responsible for aiding and advising the President on that direction and control, ceases to exist and function, end quote. The application went on to detail that if this body ceases to exist and function, no ministerial plenary or minister sitting in a group can take up its function. Kamal Ramkaran, the attorney, in a telephone interview with Globespan 24x7 News, stressed that cabinet should have already been dissolved since the passage of the no confidence motion.
Well, the case is a case to compel cabinet to resign because the courts have explained that the law requires the resignation of cabinet in elections within 3 months, but no court has said that cabinet is compelled, is required to resign. So this case tries to put into effect those decisions which have already been given to get a mandatory order requiring the cabinet to resign. So we have put in our submissions on that issue. We're saying the cabinet has a duty to resign because Article 106 of the Constitution says that on the passage of a no confidence motion, cabinet must resign and elections must be held in 3 months unless there is an extension. And so that motion passed 7 months ago and cabinet has not resigned.
The court document further stated, and I quote, if remedial proceedings are filed every day, they cannot amount to an abuse of process since the breach continues and every citizen has a right to approach the court, and it continues to be the duty of the court to hear and determine each action filed or to hear them together if it is convenient to do so. The rule of law guarantees every citizen unhindered access to the court for violations of the law, moreover, the supreme law, end quote. This is the second application filed by Anil Nandlal requesting that government and cabinet resign. With the recent address given by President David Granger, where he made a commitment to dissolve Parliament and name an election date once a time frame is given by the Guyana Elections Commission, many Guyanese have publicly voiced their opinions on the matter. As such, Globespan 24x7 News saw the views of two political pundits and commentators known for their constructive arguments and positions on matters of national interest. Political scientist Dr. David Hines said he does not envision any consensus on setting an election timeframe by any of the major political parties. Rather, he feels the decision now lies with GECOM and the president.
I dare say that after the ruling by the CCJ in June, the opportunity was there for the two sides to come together politically and agree on an election date. In hindsight, the PPP may have lost the opportunity for an early election by not coming to the table and agreeing to an election date. We know from government circles that they were thinking about a date in December. And here we are with the PPP saying that they would love a date in November, December. Now we could have gotten a consensus date for November, December had the two sides sat down shortly after the the CCJ's ruling and agreed to a date.
Dr. Hines said there is a false premise that the government is pushing for an election date for March 2019. In fact, he claims that the time frame was proposed by the Commission. Nevertheless, he noted that all eyes should now be turned to GECOM to decide on that matter.
The election date is now in the hands of GECOM, and I think the GECOM Secretariat, in consultation with the commissioners, will now have to come up with the best date. The chairman of GECOM is trying our best to try to have some kind of consensus at the level of the level of the commission. Now you're hearing conflicting reports from the meetings that the two sides had with GECOM. The PPP saying that the chair said that she wants to have election before the end of the year. The government side seems to be saying that they didn't get any indication from the chair as to when she's thinking of. And so in the absence of any clear consensus on the part of the two political actors, I think it's now left to the Secretariat and the chair, because
However, outspoken political commentator Raman Gaskin argues that the president does not have to wait on GECOM to give a time frame for elections. Instead, that power lies with the president to name a date and for GECOM to work towards meeting that deadline.
The fact of the matter is, he doesn't have to wait on GECOM to carry out his functions to dissolve the House and call the elections. The Constitution is clear. Elections have to be called within 90 days, 3 months of the no confidence motion. It doesn't say anything about waiting on anybody. And he keeps saying that. And what if GECOM is never ready? He will never call it. And all that he has done is to complicate it and create a situation where they could never be ready, because the house-to-house registration and the merging of the two lists and all of that, they're creating the problems so that GECOM could never be ready this year.
Gaskin, a former political advisor to the late President Dr. Chetty Jagan, rubbished the arguments put forward that the holding of elections is solely dependent on GECOM.
The Constitution doesn't say that. The Constitution says you have to get the two-thirds majority to extend the life of Parliament. It doesn't say anything about waiting on GECOM. The Constitution says GECOM is to conduct the elections. But the Constitution says you have to wait on them and they're in charge. They're not in charge. The Constitution is in charge. The government...
President Granger said yesterday that he could dissolve Parliament and issue a proclamation appointing a date on which elections could be held in accordance with the Constitution. However, he feels it would be reckless and irresponsible on his part to appoint a date for elections without the Commission's advice and assurance that it would be ready to conduct elections on such a date. Meantime, the People's Progressive Party Civic PPPC, in a statement yesterday, said the party notes the continued parroting of excuses voiced by President Granger on the holding of elections. The Supreme Court of Judicature moved one step closer to improving Guyana's justice system with the establishment of the Third Sexual Offences Court in the Cinderella County. Shakima Day tells us more.
At the tune of $17.4 million, the county of Essequibo now benefits from the establishment of a sexual offences court following both Berbice and Demerara. The facility at the Suddy Supreme Court was funded by the British High Commission of Guyana and the United Nations Children Fund. Acting Chancellor of the Judiciary, Justice Yonette Cummings-Edwards, in her remarks, stressed that previously the justice system was failing victims of sexual abuse, exposing them to a hostile system.
Cases involving sexual offenses were tried without victims having the benefit of a specialized courtroom. Victims had to give their evidence in open court, subject to rigorous cross-examination, cross-examination on their sexual history of the victims. Eliciting the story from the virtual complainant was indeed an emotional event for them. Then we moved from that to the proceedings in camera, and proceedings where the names of the victims were withheld from the press, and with restrictions from the type of questions to be asked in court. But that was not sufficient.
Justice Edwards posited that they have come a long way to ensure that victims or survivors of sexual violence are given a safe environment to testify without fear.
Time and again it has been mentioned that there's far-reaching emotional, physical, social even, psychological and developmental effects on the victims of sexual offenses. We in the Supreme Court are not psychologists, but as judges and magistrates, we appreciate how the victims react, how they behave when they come to court to testify. Courts exist to do justice, and justice is not done when even the very victims and even the defendants are treated in an insensitive and hostile manner by our very justice system.
Meanwhile, Minister of Social Protection Amna Ali relayed that the government of today has the responsibility in ensuring that Guyanese and victims of sexual abuse have complete faith in Guyana's justice system.
The raise of the scourge of sexual violence in Guyana and the need for robust interventions for specialized infrastructural requirements in courts for victims of sexual violence was something that could no longer be overlooked by our judicial system.
The first sexual offences court opened in 2017 in Georgetown. In May of 2018, Berbice followed suit. The specialized court has a main courtroom that will house the defense counsel, prosecutors, and jurors. It has a closed-circuit system linked up to the special measures room that will allow victims to give evidence without having to face the perpetrators. Reporting for Globespan 24x7 News, Shakima Day.
Thanks, Shakima. An argument gone wrong resulted in one man losing his life allegedly at the hands of his own brother. Dead is Satnarayan Jatan, 47, a painter by profession. Globespan 24x7 News understands that the two brothers were at their mother's home located at lot 471 Charlotte Street Enterprise on the east coast of Demerara when the incident occurred. Police in a press statement disclosed that the two were imbibing at around 15:30 on Monday when an argument ensued, moments after Jatan was discovered with a stab wound to his abdomen. He was immediately rushed to the C.C. Nicholson Hospital at Nabaklis, where he was pronounced dead on arrival. The suspect is currently in police custody, assisting with investigations. Meanwhile, the Ghana Telephone and Telegraph Company GTT is making it easy and possible to assist with hurricane relief efforts in the Bahamas by setting up two systems by which the public can contribute to relief efforts. GTT's Public Relations and Corporate Communications Manager Jasmine Harris said a donation of $50 Guyana will be received once a person texts hashtag GTT help to 620-HELP. That's 620-4357. Multiple texts can be sent by one individual. Also, donations can be sent free of charge through GTT's Mobile Money Guyana app, MMG, to merchant code 06014. The minimum amount which can be sent through this medium is $100 Guyana. Individuals can continue to send their donations until September month-end. Monies received from the public will be presented to the Civil Defense Commissions to assist with those in the Bahamas along with along the path of recovery. Harris said it is the company's hope that persons utilize this simple way of giving to alleviate the daily living of those in the Bahamas whose lives have been affected by the hurricane. Hurricane Dorian, which was dubbed as the second strongest Atlantic storm on record, battered northern Bahamas with massive waves, torrential rain, and sustained winds. Massive destruction, including the demise of homes, vehicles, and the electric infrastructure, remain crippled in its wake. Join us after these messages for more news with Shakima Day.
Globespan is pleased to announce special fares from New York to Guyana for Christmas. Seats are available to travel, and depending on which dates you choose, fares range from $8.49 to $11.69. These are limited block seats on American Airlines non-stop flight from JFK to Guyana. Call 718-845-0437. That's 718-845-0437. Or book online at travelspan.com. Travelspan does have a payment plan, so travel plans, call Travelspan. We would like to ask all of our faithful viewers to kindly like and follow Globespan 24x7 Facebook page and subscribe to Globespan 24x7 YouTube channel to receive up-to-date notifications of when we are live. Globespan 24x7 has vacancies for full-time positions such as reporters, newscasters, and news editors. Persons serious about joining a new and dynamic news team are asked to send their application to careers@globespantechnology.com.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying tuned. We'll tell you now that another meeting between Chairwoman of GECOM, retired Justice Claudette Singh, and all 6 commissioners, which lasted for well close to 4 hours, ended with no definitive decision. Opposition-appointed GECOM Commissioner Says Gunraj spoke briefly with the media. Here is what he had to say.
As you know, a lot of consideration is being given to the use of the data that has been obtained from the house-to-house process. Any use of that data will depend on the encoding of that data. As we've spoken today, I believe that 200 and something thousand records only have been encoded. The timeline that was presented to us for encoding by the Commission was the 15th of September for a conclusion. As you know, we are at the 17th of September today. That is, and their Secretariat is now saying that they will require at least 3 weeks. You'll recall me saying here weeks ago that I did not trust that timeline because my understanding of it was that it will not take the time that they are saying.
In the meantime, government-appointed GECOM Commissioner Vincent Alexander also gave some insight into what was discussed at today's statutory meeting.
We have delegated to 2 commissioners the responsibility of sitting, and I will out some timelines.
And who are they?
In conjunction, I would prefer not to put them on the line.
You're a representative of both sides?
2 commissioners, I would prefer to see it that way because I never have embraced the question of size.
Well, one from the opposition nominated and one from the coalition nominated.
You're asking the same question in a different form.
So how many
Can you speak to us
encoders
about
do you have?
encoding?
Encoders?
Yes.
I can't give the number, but I know they've been working 3 shifts.
Okay, you have a range?
Of the numbers? I don't have the numbers, but they've been working 3 shifts. We have enough encoders to utilize all of the equipment that we have available.
The Commission is expected to meet again tomorrow at 14:30 hours. We'll tell you now that following the ruling by High Court Judge Simone Morris Ramlal that this Commission of Inquiry into the affairs of the Georgetown Mayor and City Council was blinded, political commentator and witness into the recently concluded COI, Raymond Gaskin, is of the view that the matter is far from over. Kingsley Bryan reports.
Political commentator Raymond Gaskin is of the view that the ruling by High Court Judge Morris Ramlal on the MNCC Commission of Inquiry matter is misguided. Gaskin, who himself was called to testify in the COI, is adamant that the court cannot rescind the recommendations of the COI. Gaskin, in an invited comment, told Globespan 24x7 News that the judge cannot make determinations on a technical matter.
The judge cannot rescind the findings of the COI on a technical matter. The COI was conducted by the former Chancellor, Kennard. But the criminal wrongdoing, if any, of the gentleman could still be pursued by the police and they could still lock him up. They don't need COI to lock him up for criminal wrongdoing.
According to Gaskin, that should not be the conclusion of the matter.
Ain't done yet, as far as I can tell. And they can still appeal that decision. The matter is not over.
The outspoken commentator contends that the local government commission was not blinded in the actions to establish a COI, but followed a due course of action as stipulated by law.
No. The decision of the local government commission, which is a constitutional body, their decision to have an inquiry into a matter is not a matter for the judge to pronounce on. We have inquiries all the time on all kinds of different things. We just had an inquiry into Deputy Commissioner Alves. We had an inquiry into all kinds of things.
Gaskin, who was once charged with conducting an audit into the state of that very council, stressed that guidelines within the Municipal Act allows for the establishment of a COI.
As a matter of fact, the Municipal and District Council Act requires an inquiry before you fire a person. It's a requirement of the law to have an inquiry before you do these things. You have to have it if they have complaints of wrongdoing. Before you take action against the people, you have to have this inquiry, and which they did.
Gaskin said the matter is far from over, and the COI was a requirement. Apart from that, he said the police are yet to pronounce on the issue as it relates to the criminal aspects, but may be awaiting the full council to approach them. He maintains King's reappointment will not be the best decision for the council.
No, the judge didn't reinstate him. The judge did not reinstate him. No, they don't have to reinstate him. He's been fired, and he contend it, and they can pay him off and let him go. But they don't have to take him back. Taking Royston back, there will be wrong decision. Bad.
Globespan 24x7 News made an attempt to get Justice Cecil Kennard, who chaired the COI, to comment on the court ruling, but calls to his assigned number went unanswered. The local government commission says it is now awaiting the written court judgment before it makes any further decisions. For Globespan 24x7 News, this is Kingsley Bryan.
Thank you, Kingsley. Police have arrested one suspect for the murder of a 16-year-old Venezuelan teen, Alberto Inaima, which allegedly occurred at the Tabatinga Central Rubununi on Sunday. Reports reveal that the teen and the suspect were at a shop when they got into an argument, but subsequently left the scene. At around 0400 hours, Inaima's body was discovered with several wounds in Tabatinga Creek. He was taken to the Lethem Regional Hospital, where he was pronounced dead on arrival. Meanwhile, police are also investigating the circumstances surrounding the death of a Camarang Region 7 man. According to reports received, the deceased, Dorian Brong of Waramadong village, was taken to a health center for a wound he received to his upper arm. He died while receiving treatment. Investigations into both matters are currently ongoing. General Secretary of the Guyana Teachers Union, Coretta McDonald, said that although the teaching profession is not without its challenges in Guyana, the union is optimistic of a turnaround. Here's more in this Kingsley Bryan report.
As the union gears up to celebrate the 2019 World Teachers' Day activities, the GTU General Secretary highlighted a few of the challenges that exist to date.
But in addition to the finances, teachers, we've been plagued with lots and lots of issues in and out of the classroom. One such is parental involvement. The other one is teacher shortage, the condition of our schools when we talk about furnishing and so on. But I know
McDonald, however, expressed her optimism that with time, those issues will be resolved if collaboration remains paramount.
My counterparts at the Ministry of Education, they've been working with us when we forward these issues to them. They've been working to help in terms of resolving these issues. And we trust that at the end of this term, come the new term, January 28, 2020, we're going to have much more improvement with regards to our buildings and furnishing and teachers, the complement of teachers that we have in school.
As it relates to the multi-year agreement that exists between the GTU and the Ministry of Education, MacDonald highlighted that a few tweaks are being made to ensure compliance by both sides.
We have signed an agreement, and coming out of that agreement, it talks about teacher-pupil ratio. And so our classes are now smaller, which means we have need for additional teachers. And that was not readily one of the cards on the table. So we have to now make room for the additional teachers that we are going to need, and it would also entail more space in schools. So we hope that in 2020 we are going to have that as one of the priority item on the agenda.
According to her, the GTU has compromised to ensure the effects are not far-reaching. The issue of teachers' shortage is not a new one, and the GTU reiterates their position on a possible solution.
We've been advocating for over the years is the fact of having roving teachers, where we can have a pool of teachers, secondary, nursery, and primary. So if there's a school with a shortage, then you can send a teacher or two teachers there, whether it's a secondary, a primary, or a nursery school, which would help us to ease the issue of teachers being absent from classrooms.
For Globespan 24x7 News, this is Kingsley Bryan.
Thank you, Kingsley. President David Granger this morning received a courtesy call from delegates of the Miss Indigenous Heritage 2019 pageant at the Ministry of the Presidency. Prime Minister Moses Nagamutu, Vice President and Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs Sidney Alicock, Minister of State Dawn Hastings Williams, and Minister of Social Cohesion Dr. George Norton were among the government ministers present during the courtesy call. The delegates are Ms. Esther Merlot of Santa Cruz Barima-Waini Region 1, Ms. Shauna Fredericks of St. Denis Mission, Tapamakuma Lake, Pomeroon Supernam Region 2, Ms. Natalia Patterson of Santa Mission Essequibo Island, West Demerara Region 3, Ms. Anne Maria Simon of St. Cuthbert's Mission, Demerara Mahaika Region 4, Ms. Rosetta Fredericks of Morocco Bay Village, Mahaika Barbase Region 5, Ms. Varshini Herman of Oriala, East Berbice Quarantine Region 6, Ms. Jolene De Silva of Carew Creek, Kuyuni Mazaruni Region 7, Ms. Cathy Williams of Tusengyang, Pataro Superuni Region 8, Ms. Luana Alicock of Surama Village, Upper Takatu, Upper Essequibo Region 9, and Ms. Chevon Williams of Great Falls, Upper Demerara, Berbice Region 10. We'll tell you now that the body of the 7-year-old Monrepos girl who died while receiving treatment overseas for a severe burn she sustained in a fire is expected to be returned to Guyana on Thursday. Shania Prasad was undergoing a much-needed surgery, which led to the amputation of her leg and fingers. She succumbed at the Shriners Hospital in Galveston, Texas, last Sunday. Saving Hands Emergency Aid, the non-governmental organization which assisted with Prasad's treatment, said the body will be received by Sandy's Funeral Home in Georgetown. Prasad received second and third degree burns to 98.7% of her body when the North Monrepos East Coast Demerara home went up in flames at about 100 hours on August 5th when she was asleep. Prasad was medevaced to the Georgetown Public Hospital on August 10th to the Cheddi Jagan International Airport, where she boarded a chartered flight to the United States. During the short period, several corrective surgeries were performed in an effort to save the child's life. Now let's take a look at our bridge reports. will now take a look at what's happening in our regional and international news with Ritni Prasad.
Thank you, Shakima. And now for a look at what's happening in the diaspora. The Consulate General of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana in New York has refuted claims that a post circulated on social media which shows an unnamed woman pointing derogatory gestures at a crowd is tied to the consulate in any way. In an advisory, the consulate's New York chapter stated that none of the individuals shown in the photo are employed by the consulate. Globespan 24x7 News reached out to the office in New York, but no further information was given regarding the issue. It is believed that the woman may have been in attendance of the fundraiser organized by a Partnership for National Unity and the Alliance for Change coalition government in New York last week. Now here's a look at what's happening in the Caribbean. The National Hurricane Center has reported that a new tropical depression is projected to grow into Hurricane Jerry by Friday and threaten the Caribbean islands and Bahamas in the next 5 days. According to the NHC, Tropical Depression 10 was named as of 11 a.m. Tuesday and is moving northwest at 12 miles per hour with maximum sustained winds of 35 miles per hour. Meteorologists said the storm will increase the maximum sustained wind speed to higher than 39 miles per hour by this evening. Friday, computer model project the storm to impact a multitude of places, possibly including Puerto Rico and the Bahamas before turning to the north. Florida is not in any of the model's path. Most models do take to the system, which will most likely feel the effects of Hurricane Humberto in the next few days. A second system in the Gulf of Mexico became Tropical Storm Emilia on Tuesday afternoon. According to the NHC, it had maximum sustained winds of 40 miles per hour and was directly over Freeport. And now let's take a look at what's happening in Honduras. Riot police and anti-government protesters clashed in Honduras on Sunday as the country marked its independence from Spain declared in 1821. According to a report by ABC News, President Juan Orlando Hernandez presided over an official parade at the National Stadium in the capital, while ex-President Manuel Zelaya led the opposition's march in another part of the city. The protesters demanded the resignation of the president, who has been accused by the prosecutors in the U.S. of accepting money from drug cartels in his 2013 campaign. He denies these allegations. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents in the Caribbean Bureau said that the makeshift vessel called the Yola went under Saturday night with approximately 38 undocumented immigrants on board. According to a statement, 3 drowned and 11 were detained by Rame Border Patrol, the CPP stated via the agency's verified Twitter account. The CPB's Caribbean Bureau is responsible for the U.S. territories of Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. 24 passengers, all believed to be from the Dominican Republic, are still missing as of Monday morning. The boat departed from the eastern shore of the Dominican Republic, making its way into an area described by one CPB official as extremely treacherous. The boat then capsized, scattering the passengers, most of whom have not been found. Now turning our attention to news on the international scene. Supreme Court judge in the United Kingdom said that the Prime Minister is entitled to suspend Parliament even if it is for political reasons. Only recently a Scottish court ruled the 5-week suspension was unlawful, but Lord Keane QC for the government said the decision was not one for the courts. The Supreme Court is hearing 2 appeals relating to the decision by Boris Johnson to prorogue Parliament. Lord Panic QC for the campaigners against the move said it was done to silence MPs in the run-up to Brexit. He was representing an appeal brought by businesswoman and campaigner Gina Miller against a contradictory English High Court ruling. Mr. Johnson maintains it was right and proper to terminate the last session of Parliament to pave the way for a Queen's speech to outline the government's legislative plans for the year ahead. He insisted the move had nothing to do with the Brexit and his do-or-die pledge to take the UK out of the EU on October 31st. Lady Hale, President of the Supreme Court, stressed the outcome of 2 appeals would have no bearing on the timing of the Brexit. South Africa has apologized to Nigeria over a spat of xenophobic attacks, which led to a spike in tension between the two countries. 12 people were killed earlier this month while mobs attacked foreign-owned businesses, mainly in Johannesburg. A special envoy from South Africa presented an apology to Nigerian's President Muhammadu Buhari on Monday. The envoy, Jeff Rabadi, expressed the country's sincerest apologies at a meeting in Nigeria's capital. The incident does not represent what we stand for, he said, adding that South African police would leave no stone unturned in bringing those involved to justice. He said that the president was keeping a keen eye on this issue. Israeli citizens will vote for the second time in less than 6 months in an election that is widely seen as de facto confidence vote on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The ballot comes at a time for the country's longest-serving prime minister, with the right-wing incumbent facing formidable challenges to his reign and possible criminal charges in 3 corruption cases. The most recent opinion polls shows the prime minister running neck and neck with the centrist Blue and White Party headed by former military chief Benny Gantz. Neither are expected to secure a majority. Following coordinated strike on key Saudi Arabian oil facilities, which knocked out half of the country's oil capacity, oil prices plummeted nearly 5%, but top officials believe that production could be fully back online within the next week. Reports said that Saturday's attacks raised the specter of a major supply shock in the market that in recent months has been preoccupied with demand concerns and faltering global growth. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump said on Monday it looked like Iran was behind the attacks on oil plants in Saudi Arabia, but stressed he did not want to go to war. Now let's join economist Danraj Singh for a look at what's happening in Guyana in terms of oil production. Good afternoon, Mr. Danraj. You're live with Globespan 24x7, 6 o'clock news. We're going to be speaking about what's happening as it relates to oil production in Guyana, and I have a few questions for you.
Go on with me. Thanks for having me.
So our first question would be, now that Guyana will be an oil-producing nation, and based on global politics, do you foresee us going below the $60 per barrel mark?
So that's a tricky question, yes. Regardless of the geopolitics, the oil prices are controlled by global demand and supply. It's really controlled by the global markets. And regardless of whether or not the government subsidizes oil in Guyana for local consumers, or how much production the company Exxon and all the other companies are able to produce, the price really will be determined at the global level. So I don't see that falling under $60 per barrel necessarily. But like I said, if the government at the end of the day decides to subsidize oil for local Guyanese consumers, that will be a different thing.
Okay. My next question is, what is the estimated cost of production per barrel of oil in Guyana? Just to enlighten the people there, you know.
So right now, the immediate answer, the exact answer to that question is that no one really knows. Except the oil companies. We really don't have any data that suggests that here is what the potentially what the cost would look like. But just to give your viewers a sense of what the production of oil looks like globally, among the major producers of oil, the United Kingdom is the most expensive oil producer, and they produce oil on average at $44 per barrel. The cheapest among the major producers is Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia produces oil at $9 per barrel, roughly. Now, in the middle, sort of the average, is the United States, which produces oil about $24 per barrel. And if we go a little bit closer to home, right next to Venezuela, Venezuela produces oil roughly around $27 per barrel. So purely on geography and nothing else, if we're to take Venezuela's situation as some guide, you might probably want to think around the area of the 30s, maybe not above the $45. But again, nobody knows for sure what that number would be exactly, because we don't have any data to back up an analysis.
Okay, and my final question, how sustainable do you foresee Guyana's economy being as it relates to our oil discovery? And what will this mean for Guyana over time?
There is no question. The issue of sustainability, I think everybody, the public is well aware that the volume of oil that is being discovered in Guyana is enormous. I mean, I'm reading articles on the news, on global news networks that puts Guyana in the ranks of some of the biggest mega producers in the world. So clearly there's a lot of oil. Now, as to whether or how we decide to extract and the rate at which we will extract that oil clearly will depend on how many years out into the future we remain an oil producer. And that, again, no one knows exactly what that number is. How and what this would mean for Guyanese consumers is an entirely separate question. Producing the oil, like I said before, this oil would be produced and made available on the world market for sale. How Guyanese benefit from this is an entirely separate question. There's many ways. And so, for example, the first and immediate thing, like what happened in Trinidad, the question would be, would Guyanese get oil locally for their driving of their cars, for operating machine, for consumption home at a cheaper price? No one really knows. If the governments decide to subsidize, then maybe. Whether or not that is a good policy is a different thing. The second issue is whether or not how the government will use the revenues that they get from the oil and translate that into benefits for the ordinary families. That too, it's a separate question that would be worthy of a different conversation. I do expect, however, overall, Guyanese should have, the economy should be better off. There is enough resources that will be there, but how we use it will be an entirely separate question.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Danraj Singh. It was a pleasure having you on the news tonight. Do have a great rest of your day, and thanks again for joining Globespan 24x7 News. And now for a look at our final story before we head back to our studio in Guyana. Deidre Bolton and LifeWire.com editor-in-chief Lance Ulof on Amazon's plan to spend $700 million to retain employees over the next 6 years. Amazon is hanging the help wanted sign out on this Tuesday. The online shopping giant will hold 6 job fairs across the country with the goal of filling more than 30,000 vacant jobs by early 2020. The jobs ranges from software engineers who can earn more than $100,000 a year to warehouse workers who are paid at least $15 an hour to pack and ship online orders. The company said these are full-time positions and are not connected to the usual seasonal hiring for the upcoming holiday season. That's all for today. For news in the region and around the world, I am Whitney Prasad, broadcasting live from New York. Now back to our studio in Guyana.
Thanks, Whitney. Quite an interesting conversation there on oil. We'll now shift our attention to what's happening in sport with Kingsley Bryan.
Thanks, Samuel. Colin Ingram will be joining the St. Lucia Zouks for the remainder of the 2019 Hero CPL season. Ingram will be replacing Sri Lankan Tisara Pereira, who's been recalled for a Sri Lanka cricket training camp. This is not Ingram's first bout in the CPL. He joined the championship in 2018 with returning champions, the Trinbago Knight Riders, for the latter stages of that season. Ingram also played in the Australian Big Bash, the Indian Premier League, and for Glamorgan in the T20 Blast in the United Kingdom. Ingram has also played for South Africa 40 times and has appeared in 250 T20 matches in various tournaments around the world. With 400s, 38 50s, and over 6,000 runs under his belt in this format of the game, he brings a huge amount of experience to the Zouk squad as they look to make the knockout stages of the Hero CPL for the first time since 2016. And the Jamaica Tallowers were once again charged with a breach of CPL's code of conduct, that is, minimum over rate offences, at the end of match 10 between the Tallowers and the Trinbago Knight Riders on Friday, September 13 at Sabina Park. The charge against the captain of the Tallowers, Chris Gale, by the team match officials was instituted. This is the second such occurrence following the same charge being laid at the conclusion of match 3 against the same opponents in Trinidad. As provided for at Appendix 2, Section 4.2 of the Code of Conduct, the applicable monetary fine was imposed on the captain, and the Jamaica Tallawahs team was penalized with a 0.05 reduction in their net run rate for the tournament. And internationally, PSG's forward Neymar's pre-game European ban for insulting match officials has been cut to 2 by the Court of Arbitration for Sport. The 27-year-old was charged by UEFA after PSG's Champions League exit at home to Manchester United on March 6 of this year. Neymar called the award of a decisive 94th minute United penalty in the last 16-second leg tie a disgrace. He will miss the team's next 2 scheduled games, but can return to face Club Brugge on the 22nd of October. PSG took the case to the Court of Arbitration after UEFA rejected their appeal against the ban. The Court of Arbitration says it will publish the reasons behind their ruling in a few weeks. Neymar was injured with a broken metatarsal and missed both legs of the tie against United. And that has brought us to the end of our sports update for today. Back to you, Samuel.
Thanks, Kingsley. And that has brought us to the end of today's news. Before we go, here's a recap of our major headlines. 4-hour-long meeting at GECOM ends with no definitive decision. Gaskin disagrees with decision to rescind findings of MNCC Commission of Inquiry. Another court case filed seeking cabinet's resignation or removal. East Coast Demerara painter stabbed to death by his brother. And Ghana's third sexual offences court opens in Asukebo. Thank you for watching Globespan 24/7 News. On behalf of myself, Samuel Sugnandan, the news and technical team. Until next time, do have a pleasant rest of the evening. Goodbye for now.